10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time and 4 o'clock in most of Europe. Welcome to this webinar, transatlantic webinar, which is about Focus on Zinc, or has a connection to Focus on Zinc, our magazine that we've been running for almost 30 years now. Thanks for joining us. Just before we start the main events, because we've got two interesting projects that have been presented by architects this afternoon, I just wanted to make sure that if you do have any questions, please put them in the question area of GoToWebinar. We'll have an opportunity to answer a few questions at the end of the presentation about Kings College School, and then another one at the end of the project about the Google headquarters. Just before we do start the main two presentations, I'm just going to give you a very brief sort of run through about what we do. Hopefully everybody can see my screen. It's going to just be a few minutes. So Focus on Zinc is a magazine that we've been running since the late 90s, so almost 30 years. This is what you can see on the screen is actually an image of some perforated zinc, which is maybe not the traditional way of using zinc. That's a project in Belgium. But a bit of history for you. Zinc started off in Belgium, but what really kicked it off was the development of Paris in the middle of the 19th century by a guy called Baron Haussmann. And all of the grand boulevards, in fact, nearly all of the roofs of central Paris have zinc on them, and they still do to this day. Very little lead. And if you watched any of the Olympics, you might have seen the Grand Palais, which is the photo on the right. There were a few events there. I think there was some wrestling and some judo, and that's got a very, very impressive zinc ornament on the top. Moving away from France and Belgium, though, this is a project that was done in Liverpool. It's the Picton Reading Room in Liverpool Central Library. On the right, you can see a very nice dome on the inside, and on the left, on the outside. This was built in 1879 with a zinc roof. The zinc was replaced in 2012, so it lasted over 130 years, which is pretty good given that Liverpool's by the sea, and certainly at the end of the 19th century was a pretty dirty place. Now, as I mentioned, Focus on Zinc's been going a long time. It's had several different versions. There have been special editions, there have been editions for students, there have been competitions. And this year we're going to be on edition number 21, but we've actually had more than that if you include all of the special editions. And through that time, there's been lots of projects. Traditionally, zinc was used as a roofing material, but it moved to a material for facades fairly quickly, a number of decades ago. This is a theatre in Barcelona, again with a very impressive auditorium on the left. And rain screens. I'm not going to go into great detail about the technical side, but traditionally zinc's been installed on continuous supports, but for the last few years rain screens have been used. This is a university in Paris using pre-weathered quartz zinc interlocking panels. And it's used a lot further afield than just Europe. On the left is the Kennedy swimming pool in Hong Kong by Terry Farrell Architects, and this was actually done over several phases, or two main phases. And the nice thing about zinc is it doesn't really change color. This is quartz zinc, and the beginning of the project was done about 7 years after the start, the 7 years between the beginning and the start. And you can see it's right next to the sea. Hong Kong's a high wind area. There are typhoons, so very, very exposed. And on the right, a lift station just above Chamonix in the French Alps. So again, very different. And this is, we talk about offsite and renovation. This is a bit of both. A church in Pau, southwest France, and the spire was built, rebuilt offsite, and then the whole thing was craned into place. So on the left, you can see flat lock panels and a batten cap, which resembles lead roll quite a lot. And then it got slowly craned into place, which was a pretty impressive operation. And then Then there was colour. Zinc traditionally is grey, but we can add a pigment to give it a shade of red, green, blue, brown, and even some other colours. And this is a project actually in India. It's an industrial building using the Pigmento red product. So that's what we do. We can help architects all around the world. We have offices around the world. We can give you information on design and support, BIM, environmental product declarations, information on installers. And we're going to be releasing Focus 21 next month with more exciting projects. Now, just before I hand over to the first project, I did want to talk about something new. Zinc and copper are actually quite similar, and this year we've started offering Nordic copper, which comes in a range of 14 different finishes. As I said, zinc and copper are similar apart from the color. They're installed in a similar way, designed in a similar way, so we can offer a number of finishes. Right, well, that's it from me. What I'm going to do now is hand over to our first main event. Mark Davies, who's going to be talking about Kings College School in London, has worked for DavidMorleyArchitects since 2001, I believe, and has got sort of a bit of a specialisation in the sports sector and the education sector, and is also teaching at the University of Greenwich. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Mark Davies.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. I'm just going to press some buttons here and hope that everything works out. Is my screen showing?
Yep, that looks good to me.
Okay. Okay. Well, thanks for the introduction. This is a project that was finished. I think we finished the 12 months defects liability period in 2020, I think. So it was finished a few years ago. It's local to us, but it captures quite a lot of certainly the types of project that I've been involved with over my time at David Morley Architects. In that it sits in the education and sports sectors, and it's also responding to a very sensitive site. So David Morley Architects, is a little bit about the practice. We cover most sectors. We've done work in most sectors. David established the practice, I think it was 1987, so we've been going for 37 years. I've been here for 23 of those. And we like sensitive sites. We like the challenge of the planning process. We've got a 100% track record in securing planning permission, including a number of sensitive sites. Here's a few projects, some that I've been involved with and some from the wider practice. These capture, as well as education and sports, I felt with the inclusion of this a webinar arranged by VM Zinc. So zinc is such a versatile material, and it lends itself to the heritage settings where we're trying to blend something modern, a modern intervention into a sensitive heritage setting. So this is a range of projects. On the top left, you've got the Dixon Poon China Centre building at St Hugh's College, Oxford. A centre in a conservation area for Chinese studies. In the middle, there's Lister Mills in Bradford, which was a grade 2 listed 100-year-old mill building, which was converted to residential. And the intervention there was signalling regeneration. So there's these zinc pods sitting on top of the historical building. We got some independent school project there, the timber roof of the cafe at Abingdon School. And then on the bottom row, a Grade 1 listed historical park. We do a few projects in the Royal Parks. Was my first project as project architect back in 2005. That's the hub. It's a community sports pavilion in the centre of the historic landscape. In the centre, you've got that's the London 2012 Olympics, and the building at the bottom right there is the temporary water polo arena, which was designed by DavidMorleyArchitects. And bottom right, the Hurlingham Club outdoor pool, again, conservation area in the grounds of a listed building, highly sensitive setting, and a zinc roof that used technology in its development, but evolved from the Lister Mills project at the top centre. Every successful project has an engaged client who entrusts you with the process of design, and Kings College School is one of those clients. They have high aspirations for quality, and they had robust processes of briefing and monitoring design development along the way, and that was a real pleasure to work with them for this project. This is the rest of the team, also essential to a successful project. So we worked on lots of projects with the structural and mechanical, electrical, public health engineers that we used on this project. We know them very well, they know us very well, we work together as a team very well. And there was also a good contractor, very professional, recognized the client's quality aspirations and was able to deliver on them. So the project is a modest little project by lots of standards. It's a £14.7 million construction value, 3,500 square meters, and it was a traditional contract with a two-stage process. So it began with a master plan by Tim Ronalds Architects from 2012, which set out an ambitious set of construction projects to take place over, what was it, 5 to 6 years. And the last major construction project in that master plan was the sports centre that we were appointed for. The sports project, the sports buildings are the ones towards the left there, numbers 11 and 12. They're slightly away from the main campus with the large number of playing fields below them. Just to get some orientation. The existing site as we found it was, well, first of all, there's two listed buildings, one on either side of the site. On the right-hand side, sort of half drawn there, is Gothic Lodge, which was the first building in London to have electricity. Was I think Marconi was a resident at one point. And on the left-hand side, framing the site from the other side, is Southside House, which is it's I think originally a 17th century house that's been added to and adapted over the years, and now is owned and operated by a trust and used in a lot of film and television sets. And the school occupied a space in between those two buildings. So it's a very sensitive site. And there's also a school building next to Southside House called the Lodge, which was locally listed as well. So there's a lot of sensitivity. And next to those buildings, the existing sports facilities have evolved between 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, a number of different buildings with different styles, and a lot of level changes in between them as well. So this was really identifying that between the road and the deep campus at the top of the page, you had to go down ultimately about 2 meters and then back up again to 1 meter. So that was one of the challenges of the site. And then this was our first interpretation of the master plan, and it puts a new sports hall to the far side. That's actually the south of the existing buildings, and with a gallery and a swimming pool over on the left of the page there. Our observations when we were initially proposing this was it unfortunately blocks off part of the site. It makes it it forms a separation between the lodge and the rest of the campus, and that was something that was in the planning description as something that was important. It was about the openness and the transparency of the site. So we very early on proposed rotating the swimming pool and the central accommodation so that they were orientated to maintain that transparency. So this was a diagram that we proposed in a competition, and it was well liked, and we developed it from there. So the project was evolved from the very specific sports that the facility was supposed to accommodate. And there's a bit of trial and error with this, because in the initial site analysis, you establish you have a certain amount of space and you have a certain brief. And then as you develop that and you engage with the client, you want to maximize the opportunity. So it turned from a 4 badminton court sports hall to a 6-court hall, because that could be accommodated for a relatively modest uplift. So this was a model of the site starting with the 4-court option. You can see the 2 existing buildings there and the 3 new buildings arranged at right angles to them, cutting across. And as we switch to a 6-court hall, that relationship alters slightly. And what that actually did was offer an opportunity for engaging the new facility with the existing by bringing something in front of the squash court building there in the middle. The benefit of that will hopefully become a bit more apparent later. This was the master plan drawing, our master plan drawing, reflecting the developed proposals. And another important aspect of what we were trying to achieve was to eradicate those awkward level changes between the outside and the inside of the campus. And it got more complicated than that, because as well as an accessible entrance, with the development of the fire strategy, we as well as people, we had to accommodate a fire tender coming in between the existing buildings and up to the new facility, which was deep in the site. So with the benefit of the services of the client of my co-presenters, Google Earth Historical Imagery, this was the starting point. And you can see the existing sports center at the top there with the 2 listed buildings either side. And then an array of sports sort of spread out across the site. So the tennis with its awkward level changes immediately next to the building. Then there was a rifle range which had enclosing walls and was quite an obstructive thing across the site. It didn't allow views across. And then an old swimming pool that was once an outdoor pool but had at some point a tin shed put over it, and then the cricket nets at the bottom of the site. And so during construction, this middle of construction view captures quite well the phasing that was. It remained a live school site. That was one of the challenges. But at this stage, you can see the existing swimming pool is still in place, but new tennis courts have been built down by where the cricket nets had previously been, and that allowed the demolition of the existing tennis courts. And then as as things progressed, the existing pool hall was demolished, the tennis courts were extended and became a combined hockey and tennis pitch, and the cricket nets were tucked in above that. So this is the completed condition of the site. So it's consolidating all of the sports into a single building, holistic sports center with a single entrance, step-free entrance from where you can access the existing and the new parts of the facility. So these were the plans, the ground floor plan, in the same orientation as the previous image. You've got the sports hall on the left, in the center, the reception, the changing rooms, and on the right, the swimming pool. And above those, the sports hall is a double height space, the gym and strength and conditioning and studios are at first floor above the changing rooms. And up at the top there, with the color tone on it, you can see the gallery that links back to the existing. So one of the important themes, and something we try to do on almost probably all of our sports projects, is this idea of visual connection, making the sports visible, so people can see the activities that are happening inside the building, and also visual connections back out again, being able to see the gardens and the landscape and nature, and also making full use of natural daylight. So as you enter the reception area, you have a view of the pool. You know that there's a swimming pool there. From the gym, you have connection to the pool as well. It's a school, so it's also has teaching spaces. So it's the idea that a corridor is not just a corridor, but it's sized to allow informal teaching. You can brief the class before you go into the sports hall or go out to the pitches. And again, this is a reverse view of the two slides earlier, where you can see from the pool gallery, you can see back into the gym as well. And this also gives you an idea of the sense of the sports grounds beyond. So one of the things to sort of really follow that principle through, one of the important interfaces was between the pool surround and the landscape. So this actually worked very hard to achieve a pretty much level interface between external landscape and pool. So if you're swimming in the pool, and it's a deck level pool, so the water level's at the same level as the surround, you can actually see straight out into the gardens and the surrounding landscape. This is a few slides explaining the overall construction. This has existing and proposed, so the existing elements there, the existing 1970s and 1990s sports halls are slightly grayed out there, and you can see the link connection between the new and the existing. And also you can see the principle evolving here of the three linked pavilions. So the sports hall, the changing and gym and strength and conditioning block, and then the swimming pool. And then looking at those from the other angle in section, the construction of those was really tailored to the needs of those specific uses. So the sports hall is a steel frame. It's a large span space, the most economic solution, and works well for a sports hall. It was lined with concrete panels, so impact resistant to ball sports, and they play cricket in there as well, so not vulnerable to abuse from the sports being played. In the center, the strength and conditioning and gym and change room is concrete frame, so they're something that deals well with the vibrations of the gym and the weights and those kind of things, and also the wet environments of the changing rooms. The swimming pool One of the big technical challenges with swimming pools is the corrosive environment that the water treatment creates. So timber is an excellent inert material to use in a swimming pool environment, as long as it's not sitting in the standing water. So there we have a combined concrete frame that deals with everything at deck level, up to deck level, and the columns. And then the roof construction relies heavily on timber, glulam beams, and CLT bracing the beams. Also worked into this whole strategy is the ventilation strategy and the way the building works. So the sports hall needs to be used for exams as well as sports, and one of its sensitivities is Gothic Lodge on the far side, where one of the residents' key concerns was about noise coming from the facility. In particular, Zumba classes were in the existing facility were causing them a bit of distress. So the solution here was, it's a closed box. There's no opening windows along the edge to that neighboring property. And you have preconditioned air fed by fabric ductwork into the space. And that allows the environment to be adapted for exam use, if that's what it is, or assembly, or for sports use. On the far side, the swimming pool, to avoid clutter of ductwork, it has an undercroft. So it has conditioned air, heated air, fed via plenum and fed up via the surround of the pool hall. This is the glulam in the swimming pool is doing a lot of work. It's doing its structural job, but it's also profiling the roof, which sweeps down from a 2-story condition on the left, where you have a viewing gallery, down to a single story on the right, where again it's next to the sensitive garden of the of Southside House. There was a lot of engineering involved in achieving the desirable profile that has its function and also aesthetic appearance in the space. The depth of the beam on the far left there is also accommodating a roof light, which allows natural light to be brought down. The pool hall is glazed on 3 sides, so it does have natural light, but we have to take account of specular reflection off the water surface, and the roof light is a way of getting light from above down into the water and in the center of the plan, so that it's also doing that job. This is the principle of how those glulam beams are supported on concrete. So remember, keeping the glulam out of the water. It's a concrete column and beam arrangement, and it's also this is an example where acoustics is also taken into account. It's a teaching environment, the pool. The noisiest part of a pool is at the water surface. You've got potentially lots of shouting children, and there's lots of standard acoustic solutions which involve applying acoustic treated surfaces, absorbent surfaces to the hall. What this does is it, by using an angle which was calculated, the optimum was at 7 degrees, it deflects the sound away from that noisy environment. There's a few images of the construction, the installation of the glulam beams. And this is that the installed finished condition that I just described. With the you can also see the ventilation slot that's feeding that conditioned air via the plenum in the undercroft, helping to keep condensation off the glass. And yeah, so that's an engineered condition there. Lots of things going on. Apart from the zinc, the other materials in the mix, brick was very important. That was the existing site. Brick is prominent, but it's a random assortment of different finishes, ages, conditions of brick. So that was our compatible with all the existing, but matching none of them was kind of the task that we set ourselves for the brick mix. And really, this sort of just gives you an idea of the engagement of the client wanting to get this right and find a new mix that worked in that setting, especially when you have large volume spaces like the sports hall, which are essentially a box. How do you make that box not just an intrusive mass on the site? And zinc, the benefit of zinc being that it has that sort of handmade quality about it, the slight rippling and imperfection. It does fit in a historical heritage environment, but it can adapt as well to the demands of modern dynamic architecture. And the other thing I should have mentioned with that last slide was the transparency, going back to that original point. This view here shows you on the right there, you can see the 1970s sports hall. Behind the colonnade and in front of us there is the squash court, which had a very distinctive appearance, and that's the linking gallery between the new and existing. And I think this is one of the successes of the scheme, the way it sort of knits together the random assortment of existing facilities into a holistic whole. The sports hall, we had roof lights in there. I didn't mention that, but it's natural daylight in the sports environment is always desirable if you can make it work with the budget. You can see on here the precast panels, robust precast panels that form the wall surface, and the finished condition of the pool hall. So this really gives you an idea of that. It is a modern intervention in a heritage setting. You can see the lodge building in the background there through the glazed end wall. And I suppose one thing I haven't really gone into very much, but it was a key consideration, technical consideration, almost from the start to the end. The end bay on the swimming pool has a slightly different geometry to the typical bays as you go through, and that's because one, you're presenting a single story edge alongside Southside House on the right there, but also to the playing fields and to the lodge garden on the other side. You also want those to be tapered to an elegant sort of leading edge. So the edge conditions of the roof here need to accommodate that change from the deep timber glulam down to the shallow timber glulam, and also meet the edge condition along the playing fields. And really, probably zinc, I can't really think of a better material than zinc for dealing with that sort of twisting shaped geometry, and still feeling appropriate in the heritage setting. We did have the building was had a BREEAM assessment. BREEAM very good was the target. The project actually came very close to BREEAM excellent, and we had some data 2 years following completion that was suggesting it was performing better than the models had suggested. One of the combined heat and power was the heating technology, which has already evolved since this was built. You wouldn't build it with that technology now, but there are a lot of use of passive technologies to lower the energy demand. One of the reasons for having a glazed swimming pool, apart from the views, is the biggest heating demand is on the pool hall. And by having glazing, you allow solar gain, which can so often be a problem. You allow that to contribute to your heating demand. The project won Wood Awards Education Public Sector winner and also an RIBA London Award. And a very nice quote from the Chairman of Governors who went at the building opening, Lord Dayton, you will not find a better manifestation of the idea of sport.
Great, many thanks, Mark, for that presentation, a fascinating project. Before we move on to the Google HQ with CookFox, I did just want sort of a couple of comments stroke questions. There's certainly an interesting geometry that flows through a number of your projects, and I'm glad that Zinc's been able to adapt to those shapes. It was also interesting to see how the project sits in the sites with the new element and the existing. You mentioned about having an important client, which is sort of nearly always fundamental to something goes well. Was the visual connection, which is really clear in the project, was that something that the clients sort of was asked you to do, or was that something that you understood he wanted without maybe asking, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I don't think they ever said we want visual connections. That was certainly something that we like to have in all of our projects, but I think the fact that it's slightly hazy makes me think it was probably discussed in the very early meetings, and it was certainly in our competition submission and very early buy-in. So that, that's one of the pleasures of when you work with an engaged client, that you go on the journey together. So I think it probably originated with us, but they bought into it, and certainly since completion, when I've been back there, it's one of the things that the members of the sports staff have commented on as well.
Yeah, and obviously you talked a lot about the materials, the zinc and the brick, and those often go together. The sedum roof, was that something again sort of client driven, or was that your choice? How did that come about?
That wasn't, I think, given the choice, the client wouldn't have had a sedum roof. I think most estate managers want things that they don't need to maintain, and sedum, that does require maintenance. It was important in planning terms because of the connection to the reasons for the listing of the buildings are different on either side. And one of the reasons for the listing on Southside House, it mentions the gardens. There's a sort of series of gardens sort of with semi-dividing walls. So this was in part a response to, this is the part of the new building that connects to the garden of Southside House. So that's important. And it also offers a bit for ecology. Yeah.
Okay. Well, listen. It was many thanks, Mark, for the project and the presentation of the project. That very fascinating. I'm going to move to the second project. There are some similarities, but it's a very different project. So I'm going to let the friends at CookFox get the presentation up on the screen about the Google HQ in New Jersey. I think we've got two presenters. There's going to be Spencer Lapp, who's been working with CookFox for 9 years, and we're also going to have Mark Rusitzky, who's a partner and has been at CookFox since, I believe, 2003, with sustainability sort of at the heart of many, or if not all, of the projects. And I believe that he was involved in One Bryant Park, which was the first LEED Platinum skyrise building that got LEED level Platinum. And I think actually, personally, I stayed in the hotel about a year or two after it opened, which if there was a hotel at the bottom, if I'm getting that right, which was fantastic. But that's another story. Right, so I'm going to hand over to Mark and to Spencer. Just if you do have any questions, don't forget to put them in the question area, and we'll try and get to a few of those questions at the end. So Mark, Spencer, I'll let you take it away.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, my name is Mark Rusitzky. I'm a partner at CookFox Architects. I'm going to be presenting today the St. John's Terminal project, which is now home to Google. They actually have their Alphabet team there. And the project, one correction in the introduction, the project is actually located in New York City, on the west side of Manhattan. But let me start out by giving a kind of quick introduction to our firm. We have, our office is located in New York City, also in Manhattan. We're about 85-person studio in New York. We have a small studio in Minneapolis as well. And sustainability and biophilic design is really inherent as part of our whole design process. It's in our DNA in projects. And we just wanted to start out by going through a few of our projects, because when we were first asked to participate in this, we were really thrilled, because zinc is a product that we absolutely love for a lot of the reasons that's already been described today, that there's just such inherent beauty in the material, the way that it ages, the way that it patinas. We consider it kind of a live material because it changes subtly over time. And the way that Mark really described very well, that kind of handmade quality and the beauty in its imperfections. The project up on screen is a building that was done very early on. It was one of the first projects of CookFox. It's historic Front Street. It's actually an assemblage of about 11 different buildings, that some of which were infill buildings, some of which were ground up new buildings, all really recreating this whole new street. And that tower kind of rounded turret portion that you see right in the center of the screen, that was done in zinc, in the zinc material, and pairs well again with masonry and steel, and really kind of captures some of the historic flavor of that neighborhood in downtown Manhattan. So, the next slide is showing some more of those buildings. It's actually again 11 buildings that form a street across from one another. So that was back in 2006. The next project is City Point, which is also a large mixed-use assemblage of buildings. It's a retail podium and 2 residential towers. The tower that you're seeing there is affordable housing project that is clad with zinc, and there you can see some different materials. Actually has some stainless steel that's integrated in there, and we love the fact that the zinc will patina and age differently than that stainless steel over time, and it's exposed to this marine environment, and it's really kind of taken on its own life. We also love the fact that this is an affordable housing project, and when we talk to our market rate clients or our high-end clients, and we talk about the material, and we always point out the fact that we did an entire building clad in zinc for an affordable housing project. 512 West 22nd Street is a workplace project that was completed in 2019. This is also in Manhattan. It's very close to, it's in the Chelsea Gallery District, very close to the High Line. The material here, these kind of rounded corners, is mostly terracotta, but It works very well with some additional highlights of the zinc material. You can see some of the zinc down at the lower storefront area. A few more images of that, some details of the zinc material. And again, you know, I mentioned how biophilic design is really inherent in our DNA, always trying to carve out places for outdoor space and create this connection. In this case, it's a direct connection to that pedestrian garden, the High Line in Manhattan. And on the top of that building, creating some type of roof terrace. You know, the roof is something we refer to as the fifth facade. We joke here that we never found a horizontal surface that we didn't want to plant. So that's a spectacular roof terrace, and the bulkhead above that is all clad in zinc. And this is another affordable supportive housing project that we did with Breaking Ground, and it was more recently completed in 2022. This is another affordable supportive housing project that is primarily clad in zinc. Just a couple of images of that building, pretty simple, but the materiality itself, it really stands up and holds a lot of the inherent beauty of it. Okay, so now moving on to the St. John's Terminal project. One thing that we always do that's part of our process really early on in a project is we try to get a lot of historical research. And in many cases, we go back to before colonization and really look at the historic place, the historic context. We love this Mannahatta, which was a project that was done by our friend Dr. Eric Sanderson, looking at Manhattan pre-colonization. And it's really interesting because you can see the historic shoreline, you can see where rivers originally were, and it really helps kind of inform the way that Manhattan formed and the way that some of the buildings and infrastructure kind of came about. So again, just continuing to look at the way that history evolves, it's really useful to look at these maps. In this case, this map from 1861, you can see how the shoreline changed with all of this infill. And in the case of this project, it's sitting in that infill area, and it really helped inform the project and the kind of flood mitigation issues that take place in the project. And then looking back on more historical research, now I had mentioned the High Line, which this is really an early image that helped inform why the High Line was formed in the first place. There used to be all of this train cars and pedestrians and cars all on the street level, and they would have to have what was called the West Side Cowboy that would really kind of make sure that all of this chaos didn't crash into one another. And so that's why eventually what was called the West Side Improvement Project, these elevated rails were built to try to sort out some of that chaos. And here's this early picture of the St. John's Terminal building, which is that elevated rail system. It's the system we now know as the High Line. The rails into this building were severed for many, many decades, but this was the terminal for all of those rails. Ships would come in. You can see some of the piers in the background. There's another picture coming up that show those piers where ships would come in, offload all of their their cargo and load it onto freight cars, and it would go north out of Manhattan. But again, we love looking at these kind of old images. It really gives us a sense of how the building was used, and what kind of inherent beauty there is that we can capture about it. This is an image of when that building first opened up. Some politicians were there, and we really loved the kind of open-ended nature of the building itself, just looking at how it was used and the kind of authentic nature of the building that we inherited. Looking at some of the historic images on the interior as well. And again, how it was used, and all the people that inhabited that building as it kind of came to life. The building was 3 blocks long, and you can see much better in this image that all of the working piers in the background where ships would come in, unload all of their freight, and load it onto inside the building onto cars. It meant that the building had this incredible robust structure because it could house all of these full freight cars that we later utilized. And again, just looking back at some of the advertising and some of the kind of other artifacts around the building that really kind of helped inform some of the design decisions as we went forward. There was a time in the 1970s that the building, and actually beyond that, the building was really used as kind of this back of house infrastructure space. It was primarily empty for a long time. Bloomberg Media had some back of house infrastructure in it, got used for some events, but it was a primarily empty building for many decades before we started working on it. And here it is. This was 2018, right before kind of construction started on at this 3 block long building. It had a 4th story addition that was put on it in the 1980s. That was not very well done. So it was useful to have all of those historic images and historic drawings to kind of go back and look at. We worked with Atlas Capital and Westbrook at this time to go through kind of New York City approvals process, working with a lot of the community members to get a change of use for the project, which would allow some residential buildings and a small commercial building. And right around 2017, 2018, that what's labeled as the South site was sold to Oxford Properties, who we worked with on the building that was eventually sold and occupied by Google. So here's the building that we started with, and I'm going to hand it off to Spencer to kind of walk through the design process into the building we now know as the Google building.
Thank you, Mark. So, you know, this is the view standing on West Houston Street, looking west to the Hudson River, and you know, approaching the project. You know, we always want to understand the neighborhood, understand the people who live and work and use you know, the neighborhood, and you know, one of the kind of dominating features of the existing building was how it created sort of this barrier to the perimeter of the city. And the perimeter beyond this building is Pier 40, which is a popular sports venue for soccer and you know, other sports, as well as the Hudson River Park, which is a very popular linear park that goes along a lot of the western side of Manhattan and the Hudson River. And so, we really wanted to make sure that we were honoring the historic industrial nature of the building, and approaching the project in the understanding of adaptive reuse and maintaining as much of the existing structure was really important to us, not just to preserve sort of the history and honor the sort of history of the High Line, but also to make sure that we really captured as much of that embodied carbon as possible. This is a building that was built for trains to be coming in on the second floor. This was the end of the High Line, the terminus of the High Line, and so really our first move, as we were looking at this, is slicing the facade and sort of taking this joint here and slicing it so that we really expressed the previous use of the building. And you can see here the track beds, so where each of the trains would come in, and making that a part of the facade. I think the idea here was that it's really trying to open up that connection to the river, understanding that this is not just a building for Google. It's really a place where the whole city kind of passes by, and part of that was creating this plaza in front of the building on West Houston Street called St. John's Plaza. Mark mentioned that there's a fourth story added to the base of the building, so that was one of the first things we took off, that kind of addition to the base building, and then because the structure was built so robustly for all these trains, that really allowed us to very easily add 8 additional stories of overbuild to the base, and add these office floor plates, which turns this building into sort of a ground scraper that gives enormous floor plates that really allow Google to be able to have sort of an experience on a floor. So, so it's the same idea as a skyscraper that might have small floor plates stacked really high. This is sort of the idea that you can get a lot of floor area with large floor plates on a lower building, and have a better experience in that. A lot of other considerations here. The building was, the existing building was raised up in order to facilitate loading onto trucks and trailers. So the ground floor was already, maybe around 5 feet above sidewalk elevation, and we maintained this elevation for the flood zone. This building's right next to the Hudson River. There's a lot of flood concerns here, and we created this public plaza that created this a way to enter the building and raise up to the above flood elevation. So in plan, you can see St. John's Terminal is the center building. It's really sort of a string of really kind of unique buildings. DSNY is the sanitation building, and it's an entirely planted roof. St. John's, we really wanted to create sort of a stepping terrace so that many floors had access to the outside, as Mark mentioned before. we consider the roof the fifth facade, and really value connection to nature, landscaping, access to the outdoors. And then the north site here, which is a project that's under construction currently. The other thing that we felt strongly about was keep opening up this connection here, which we call the garden alley, and allowing more permeability through the site. You can see here the Hudson River Park. This is a popular bike lane. We worked with the city and the state to install a new crosswalk, a safer crosswalk than some of the other places people were crossing, and it is creating a lot of connection to the city. The garden alley is entirely accessible. The building in the cellar has over 500 bike parking spots. It's I think it's definitely the biggest bike parking in the city. It might be in the country. And approaching the project, accessibility, and really encouraging people to bike to the city, to bike to the site was a big part of the design. So the view from Pier 40, you can see the design for the overbuild, really hinged on this sort of high performance wall. We had initially intended all of this to be zinc because of the sort of high performance curtain wall. It ended up being anodized aluminum, and zinc ended up being everything else that we possibly could. So bulkheads, soffits, places where the tactile nature of the zinc, the way that people could really kind of understand the true material quality of the zinc, all of sort of those infill pieces. And we have the roof terrace. We jokingly call this the widest sunset in the city. You're just right on the Hudson River. The facade gives you this fantastic view of the sunsets, and really kind of the connection to nature was a big part of the project. And this is a view from another one of our projects that's just a block away, 555 Greenwich. And this is zinc bulkhead looking over at St. John's, sort of zinc bulkhead and sort of roof terraces above. We thought this was just a great way of kind of looking at the projects. And a rendering of the final project. This is sort of the connection of Pier 40 with all of its sports fields and parking, the Hudson River Park, the connection, and sort of really tying up the qualities of zinc and of creating a better space for the people who inhabit the building and go and work there every day, as well as the greater city, and drawing connections, opening up, creating a permeability to the cityscape for everyone.
Great, many thanks, Mark and Spencer. Fascinating presentation. I mean, it's nice to get a real historical context and sort of understand a bit further back why and how things happen. Well, I think it might be a bit of a daft question, but I sort of feel like I should ask it. Was this building ever considered for demolition, or was that always never going to happen?
Yeah, that is an interesting question. I had mentioned that we went through this process, a city approval process in New York to change a lot of it to residential. So there was another large master plan that it was just given the enormous floor plate and given the floor to floors, it was really difficult to reuse a lot of the building for that residential purpose. So when the program switched to using that entire south site for a workplace building, we were really thrilled because we had worked really hard to try to figure out ways to save the building. The building is, you know, it's this beautiful old building, but it's not a New York City landmark. So there was no requirement to keep it. But we really love the fact that we could, you know, a portion of it was demolished, that northern portion, the portion that spanned over West Houston Street and onto that northern site. But the fact that we could find a logical place to open it up and really expose some of the existing rails and existing platforms, we were really fascinated about it, and we were thrilled that it was going to be able to be kept and used as a workplace building.
Right. No, I mean, it's great that I hadn't seen that image of the sort of the rail plates. I mean, that looks really good. Another thing, the sort of the City Point project, which is obviously very different, but the sort of texture of your buildings, there's quite pronounced, and with the zinc as well. I believe on that project you use a sort of standing seam, but from what I know, that you didn't use the traditional height, which would be 25 mil or 1 inch. It's a bit more pronounced. Was that to do with creating more texture because it was the sort of golden hour on the west facing building? What was the sort of choice behind that?
Yeah, that's exactly right. We wanted to really get the shadow cast and get a lot of the texture. We also love the fact in the standing seam you could really read some of those ripples that have been talked about before. Those, in that case, it was done on these very large kind of mega panels. So all of those were fabricated offsite and brought onto the site and kind of assembled. But we went out to the facility and they showed us how they were doing those standing seams and had us, you know, do a couple examples as well. So like the fact that we were really watching that hands-on process was really kind of fascinating. But you're absolutely right. It's a little bit deeper, and we really wanted to kind of capture some of the texture and some of the shadows up towards the top of the building. It recesses a little bit more, so you could get even more.
That does sort of, there's a question that was put into the chat about flatness that I wanted to answer, because both your project and the David Morley project, there's a sort of a craft element to zinc, which is very important. But there are ways of using other systems in zinc where you don't have it's a flatter system. It's more a rain screen as opposed to more of a traditional standing seam. So that is possible. Just wanted to sort of answer that question. We sort of run over a little bit. We're sort of half expecting that because you know, they're two really fascinating projects. So I wanted to thank Mark, you and Spencer. Really great projects. I haven't been to New York for a while, but I'd like to swing by there if I'm in town. Many thanks for taking the time to present it. Obviously it's used zinc, but to do the presentation to us. It's you know, webinars maybe for some people are getting a little bit boring, but being able to bring two projects either side of the Atlantic live and get the architects to talk about them is you know, it's a really nice thing to do. So many thanks. And Mark Davies, many thanks as well for the project in the King's College School. That was really good as well. So thank you everybody. Thanks for joining us. There were some questions about contacting us. If you do want to contact us, please go through your local contacts in your country. You can always drop us an email, vmzinc.co.uk, where I'm based. I think there were some people asking about some details. The best thing is just drop us an email and we'll get back to you within the next day or two. So I'll just say thank you to everybody. Again, Mark, Spencer, and Mark from David Morley, and see you all very soon, hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for putting this together.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.